The new plant is a hex type. That gives it more surface area than previous types, and also makes it easier to plan expansions. We're gonna make this place huge.
Hex, huh? Like a beehive.
Nothing wrong with that. They say the honeycomb design is one of the strongest. I hear they're even thinking of using it in tank armor.
Good enough for me. I'll see about finding us some worker bees.
Appreciate it, boss. Remember why we created MSF Snake. To provide military force to whoever needs it, wherever they are, regardless of nation or ideology. Our beliefs aren't all that lofty.
We just won't be the tools of any one country.
Exactly. We know only how to fight. But we refuse to live our lives at the whim of the state. The MSF seal is patterned after Pangaea, the supercontinent from 250 million years ago. Back then, the whole world was one landmass. One world. No gaps, no rifts.
Our strength will take us back there. What about you, Kaz? Any interest in expanding MSF?
You'd better believe it. I want to make us into an organization that doesn't take orders from any country. Just like you were saying, we have to be strong. Strong enough to defend ourselves. We need money, too. Money to train soldiers to fight. The way I see it, we make MSF into something along the lines of a new kind of business. A contractor providing the full range of military services, not just combat, but logistics, training, weapons, outfitting, and R&D. Combining the small footprint and exceptional performance of special forces with the raw military might of a full regular army. Only with that kind of power can we break free of nation-states. What I need from you, boss, is to go out and find guys we can bring back here using Fulton Recovery. Then tell us what assignment to use them for. I'll take care of the rest. Your old mentor, the boss. She was known in the West as the mother of special forces, right?
Nothing but propaganda.
Actually, it's not all that far from the truth. I heard the KGB just set up a counter-sabotage cell. Alpha Group, I think they call it. There's even a rumor that West Germany created a counter-terrorist unit within its border police after the debacle at the Munich Olympics. Back home in the States, they've got the illustrious Green Berets, the SEALs, and your personal creation, Foxhound. The seeds sown by the boss are beginning to sprout. Same goes for MSF, right? In creating it, you were carrying on the will of the boss.
Yeah. She taught me how to fight the hard way. She beat it into me.
And now, thanks to her, we can take on missions other than just conventional combat. After all, we've got the same mother as the Army's Special Forces. Costa Rica isn't alone. All of Latin America is getting swept up in the superpowers' Cold War. The whole ideological split between East and West. In the end, it's just a greedy scramble for wealth by the ruling classes. The Western bourgeois stand to lose everything if their countries go communist. After all, the communists want to abolish private property altogether. So the capitalist rulers desperately tried to halt the global spread of communism. Hence the phenomenon of red baiting. And the communists, for their part, didn't exactly stay true to their principles. They tried to escape class-based society. But between Stalin's autocracy and the rise of the nomenclatura, they ended up creating one anyway. Once people have power, they stop caring about equality. That's where communism, where society in general reaches its limits. The rulers only care about their own gain. The opposing side becomes a risk factor that threatens the profit, and thus the ongoing struggle between capitalism and communism was born.
And now, nuclear deterrence is part of the picture.
Exactly. They say nuclear weapons are the reason we haven't seen conflict on a global scale since World War II. The thought that your opponent might launch nukes against you sort of makes it tough to start an armed conflict. Especially now that they've got intercontinental ballistic missiles. Nowhere is safe.
Of course, all that has caused military expenditures to skyrocket.
Well, the only way to ward off a preemptive strike is to flaunt your own nuclear stockpile. and that's caused their numbers to increase exponentially, not just with regards to destructive power, but in terms of targeting technology too. Now they can hit a target halfway across the world with pinpoint accuracy. In a way, the space race was a demonstration of that technological progress.
And as a result of all that, we now have mutually assured destruction.
It's the ultimate form of deterrence. No one's going to launch their nukes knowing they'll be obliterated in return.
I don't know. The chance of somebody hitting the button by mistake is never zero.
You're right. Even with peace guaranteed by MAD, there's always the risk of an accident.
Nobody wants the world to end on account of some machines malfunctioning.
On the other hand, thanks to deterrence, we haven't had a world war since 1945. You gotta admit, it has been pretty peaceful.
Not that it matters to us.
People point at the nuclear arms and space races and call it a Cold War. I say if they're not shooting at each other, why not call it world peace?
Doesn't mean war is gone. Look at Korea. Look at Vietnam.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking in relative terms here. Besides, if war died out completely, we'd be SOL.
We're not warmongers.
And yet, we can't survive in a world that's at peace.
You got a point.
So it's been more than 10 years since the Cuban Missile Crisis, huh?
I don't think we'll ever forget it.
No kidding. Those 13 days starting October 15th, 1962, were probably the closest we ever came to all-out nuclear war. The Russians deployed nuclear missiles to Cuba. America responded with a naval blockade. Then Russia shot down an American spy plane. I was still a teenager back then, but I remember what it felt like to be one step away from nuclear war. The adults were freaking out.
If it wasn't for the Cuban Missile Crisis, there might never have been an Operation Snake Eater. And
What's the matter, Snake? It's not like you to get all hypothetical.
I guess not. It was the reassessment after the missile crisis that paved the way for the hotline between Moscow and Washington, and also for détente. That's irony for you.
The Treaty of Tlatelolco was enacted to make Latin America into a nuclear-free zone. It bans the testing, use, manufacture, production, acquisition, storage, and deployment of nuclear weapons. The impetus was pretty obvious. The series of crises triggered by the deployment of nukes in Cuba.
Not hard to imagine. Those 13 days had the whole world frozen in fear.
Of course, the country that started it all, Cuba, hasn't actually ratified it yet.
Still, the treaty's backed by over 20 countries. Anyone flouting at risk becoming an international pariah.
True. Opinol would investigate, no doubt. I heard they used Japan's 3 non-nuclear principles as their model when they drew up the treaty. I think the Treaty of Tlatelolco might have been their way of asking nuclear powers not to use nukes against them. That's the biggest difference between the treaty and the 3 principles. I guess you could call it a 4th principle.
So Costa Rica abolished its army back in, 1949? Pretty gutsy move for a Central American nation at the time.
Yeah, well, they'd just come out of a civil war. I'm sure they were driven by a desire to avoid another tragedy like Paz said. But I think they had a more compelling reason. Army coup d'etat are a way of life in so many Latin American countries. Imagine seeing that up close.
No army, no coup. Makes sense.
Plus, their economy was in ruins, so they honestly didn't have any money to spend on an army anyway.
Yeah, but weren't they on less than friendly terms with Nicaragua?
Yeah, and in fact, Nicaragua did end up invading. But the Civil Guard fought back and the OAS brokered a ceasefire. The US and the rest of the OAS had their back, and they used it to full advantage. For a quarter century, they survived in the powder keg of Central America. That must have taken some serious diplomacy, even if the Civil Guard is pretty decked out for a police force.
Must be tough to be a country without an army.
So it's been more... Hey Snake, mind if I ask you something?
Since when did you start asking permission?
So, You used to be part of a CIA paramilitary unit, right?
That's right.
Ever do any ops in Central America?
No, not personally. But there were other units who did all kinds of stuff.
I remember the Bay of Pigs invasion back in '61. The papers had a field day with it.
Operation Zapata. That was the CIA code name. The whole thing went south.
Then there was Che Guevara, being hunted down in Bolivia. I heard the CIA had a hand in that, too.
There were several units similar to mine. MSP, SOG. They'd recruit former special forces, train them as intelligence agents, and send them on deniable covert paramilitary operations. One of those units trained the Bolivian army in counter-guerrilla tactics.
And then had them shoot El Che.
So the story goes.
Around here they say La CIA instead of CIA, huh?
Nothing strange about it. That's how it's pronounced when you read it in Spanish.
It has the feminine noun ending a, so they use the article la. Apparently some people have taken to using the term UCLA.
That's a new one to me. What's it mean?
It stands for Unilaterally Controlled Latino Assets.
Meaning they're local agents?
Yeah, that's the idea. Washington uses them like pawns. Nobody knows who they really are or what they're doing. So I hear Amanda mistook you for Che Guevara, Snake. That's not too bad, huh?
Yeah, right. I'm not even worthy of polishing his boots.
Don't be so modest. From where I'm standing, your men see you as a great man.
As great as the century's most complete human being.
That's Sartre, right? Well, there's hardly been a more iconic figure of his times than Che.
Oh, he was more than that. He was a true revolutionary and a great warrior.
I'm with you there. Can you believe that when he first went to Cuba with Fidel, they had only 12 guys with them?
But they rallied. They brought in new recruits, won the support of the peasants, expanded their organization.
And in the end, they overthrew the Batista regime.
People flocked to them because they were honest. They won because they were strong. Those are the qualities that make men great.
You know, we're kind of in the same boat they were back then. Here we are, a handful of mercenaries taking on an army backed by the United States.
Yeah, we've got a long way to go.
But we've got to keep on going. It's not just about winning in battle. You need to think about recruiting people and growing this operation.
Got it.
Boss, did you ever read Che Guevara's book, Guerrilla Warfare?
I can't remember if I got to that one or not.
You should have. That's why I lent it to you. A lot of the guerrilla tactics it covers apply to sneaking missions too. Che was one of the first people to articulate the theory of guerrilla warfare. T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, was another one. And Mao Zedong and his On Protracted War. Theory aside, Nicaragua's General Sandino was one of the first to put guerrilla tactics into practice, which explains why the Sandinistas named themselves after him.
If you think about it, guerrilla warfare itself has been around since ancient times. There's only so many ways a small group can upset a large army.
There was a samurai in Japan who excelled in guerrilla warfare.
No kidding.
Tsunoki Masashige. He was a warrior who lived in the medieval era. He used unconventional tactics to help overthrow the Kamakura shogunate.
Like what?
Trojan horse-style maneuvers and decoys to confuse the enemy. The best one was when the enemy was climbing the castle walls. He dumped boiling water and human excrement on them.
Sounds great. Let's put it in the MSF playbook.
You're not serious, are you, boss?
Why not? We've got plenty of crap to unload.
Yeah. I'll think about it.
What's wrong, Kaz? You sound beat.
Yeah, the problems never seem to end around here.
You should take a break. Share a cup of mate with the other guys. It'll give you a chance to connect with them.
I wonder if Che and his men ever sat around and drank mate.
I bet they did. Che was famous for his love of the stuff.
Oh, man, whoever thought of this was a genius. You can put it in a gourd and carry it around, and there's a special straw with a filter attached so you can drink it any time.
That's not all. It's full of essential vitamins and minerals, too. Nice to have in a guerrilla war when food is short.
Yeah. Wish I had a chance to share some with the blonde Parisienne when I was out hiking.
Well, how do you know about that?
It takes a thief. Or should I say it takes a snake to know one. Snake. The year the Cuban Revolution was won, Che visited Japan as a member of an economic delegation. While he was there, he visited Hiroshima.
Hiroshima?
Since he was there to discuss economic issues, Hiroshima wasn't part of the original itinerary. Some said the Ministry of Foreign Affairs didn't want to let him go, but he went anyway. He snuck out of his hotel and took an overnight train.
Traveling guerrilla style. Sounds like Che, all right.
He visited the Peace Memorial Museum and the Atomic Bomb Survivors Hospital. Apparently, it gave him quite a shock. As a doctor, it must have been painful for him to see how the victims suffered.
Nukes destroy everything.
He was quoted as saying, "They put you through this, and still you do whatever America says." Those words really hit me hard, especially when I think of my mom. He said something else, too. Let us all love Hiroshima and its people.
I can believe it. Che never managed to numb himself to other people's pain. That's why people loved him. And why he died.
That bandana you're always wearing, that thing's a real antique. Ever think about getting a new one?
This one's fine.
Come on, we can't have our boss wearing a raggedy old thing like that.
It was a gift, okay? It wouldn't be right to get rid of it.
It was. Okay then. Speaking of which, Che supposedly had a black scarf he used to take everywhere with him.
A scarf?
One of his comrades gave it to him when he broke his arm in battle. Che used that silk scarf as a sling, and the comrade who gave it to him became his second wife.
Alida, right?
Even after his arm healed up, he never went anywhere without that scarf. What about you? You get that bandana from someone special?
No, nothing like that. It's important to me. That's all. You were saying Japan has a peace constitution too.
Yep. Japan renounced war in Article 9 of its constitution, aspiring sincerely to an international peace based on justice and order. The Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation, and the threat or use of force as a means of settling international disputes. In order to accomplish the aim of the preceding paragraph, land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. The right of belligerency of the state will not be recognized.
You know it by heart.
Some things you never forget.
Impressive. There were some parts I didn't quite get, though. Like the whole means of settling conflicts thing.
Yeah, that's been the subject of debate. Whether or not it forbids any and all use of force. The current Constitution was originally drawn up under the Allied occupation. The first draft was even submitted by Allied GHQ. So naturally, there are some who feel the Constitution was imposed on Japan by foreigners.
Things like that are never simple. Same for every country, I guess.
One thing's for sure, though. Not having an army let Japan focus on economic recovery after the war. In that sense, it's the same as Costa Rica.
Kaz, you were in the Japanese Self-Defense Force, right? I thought that Article 9 you were talking about earlier prevented Japan from having an army.
Yeah, and that's another subject of controversy. The Self-Defense Force is an organization for the purpose of defense. Article 9 of the Constitution does not deny Japan's right to self-defense. Therefore, the SDF is constitutional. That's Tokyo's official stance.
Sounds complicated.
Call it what you will. It's a distinctly Japanese way of interpreting things.
The U.S. has military forces stationed in Japan, right?
Right. Even though the Allied occupation ended, American forces are still stationed there under the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty.
Unlike Costa Rica.
Part of it stems from the occupation, but Japan also occupies a key strategic position from America's perspective. It's next door to the Soviet Union and close to China and North Korea as well. It's integral to the security of Pacific Asia. For America, Japan represents a barrier against communism.
What about for Japan?
As you might expect, there's deep-rooted opposition to the alliance. In 1960 and 1970, when the treaty was up for revision, there were mass protest movements against it, especially in Okinawa. The U.S. only gave it back to Japan 2 years ago, and American bases are still concentrated there. It's a heavy burden for the Okinawans to bear.
Then why don't they scrap the treaty?
Lots of reasons. There's the imbalance of power with the U.S., of course, and if Japan pulled out, they'd be losing the nuclear umbrella America provides. And as for whether the JSDF could defend the country after the Americans left, I really couldn't say. Costa Rica is in a similar situation. They depend on the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, the so-called Rio Pact.
So, the countries with peace constitutions end up having to rely on other countries' armies. Kind of ironic.
On the flip side, not everybody in America is satisfied with it either. Some people argue Japan is freeloading off America's security guarantee. And you know how Japan's industrial exports are making inroads in the States.
Yeah, I've got a Japanese camera myself. Best damn camera around.
Japan's low defense spending allows it to invest more in economic recovery and expand its share of the American market. That's a bitter pill for Americans to swallow. You know that today, Japan is under the American nuclear umbrella.
Right.
The U.S. vowed to retaliate against any country that launches a nuclear strike against an allied country. That promise deters nuclear attacks against America's allies, hence the term nuclear umbrella. But suppose the Russians nuke Tokyo. Would America really nuke Moscow in return? If they did, the Soviet Union would undoubtedly retaliate. Would Washington really be willing to risk having a bomb dropped on itself in order to avenge Japan? I'm not so sure.
Don't tell me you're still worried about Japan. After all these years?
It's not that.
To be honest, I'm not convinced either. But Moscow faces the same dilemma. Maybe Washington wouldn't retaliate on Japan's behalf. Then again, maybe it would.
So you're saying Moscow wouldn't want to risk being attacked either?
The whole concept of nuclear deterrence is entirely hypothetical to begin with. When you get down to it, it's all smoke and mirrors.
Japan shall not possess, manufacture, or allow the introduction of nuclear weapons into Japan. Those are the 3 non-nuclear principles set forth by the Japanese government.
Allow the introduction? That's funny. Some of the U.S. warships that visit Japanese ports are armed with nukes. Or are you going to tell me they transfer them at sea onto other ships every time they visit?
You raise a good point, Snake. But the Japanese government doesn't recognize it as such. The introduction of nuclear weapons into Japanese territory would need to be agreed upon in advance. America hasn't made any such agreements. Therefore, they aren't bringing nukes into Japan. That's the official excuse.
Doesn't sound like much of an excuse to me.
I don't blame you. Keep in mind, though, Japan suffered actual nuclear attacks. Anti-nuke sentiment there runs deeper than you think. I suppose the government's not really in a position to admit that sort of thing.
So tell me, Kaz, how's the self-defense force you were in different from an army?
The JSDF is set up for national defense. It's not configured for aggression against other countries. It's what you'd call exclusive defense.
Exclusive defense?
It's the fundamental strategic posture of the JSDF. No preemptive attacks. Only the minimum defensive action necessary after an enemy attacks.
Anything defined as self-defense, then?
The JSDF originated as the National Police Reserve. Back then, American forces stationed in Japan were being sent over to fight in the Korean War. So in a sense, the NPR was filling a gap.
Police, huh? Reminds me of the Costa Rican Civil Guard.
Yeah, exactly. They're also dispatched to provide disaster relief. The year before I joined, they had a hell of a time trying to rescue some buses that got hit by landslides.
So why'd you quit the JSDF?
Because I didn't have a reason to be in Japan anymore.
A reason?
My mom had died 3 years earlier, so I didn't have to care for her anymore. With her gone, there was no point hanging around in Japan.
Yeah, but a man with your talents could have risen pretty high in the ranks, I imagine.
I don't know what they made of me. Could be it actually alienated me from the brass. And personally, I could never get used to the idea of exclusive defense.
Meaning?
On a strategic level, I can see how a country could go with the exclusive defense model used by the JSDF, and I've got nothing against my fellow soldiers who believe in it. On a tactical level, though, it just rubbed me the wrong way. To put it simply, I was itching for a real fight.
I figured.
And I felt as long as I was in the JSDF, I'd never be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with my father, who was in the U.S. Army. Seeing Yukio Mishima's suicide didn't help either.
Yukio Mishima, the guy who wrote The Temple of the Golden Pavilion.
The way he questioned the status quo hit home with me. Not that I admired his vision or anything, but it did get me thinking, that's for sure. Life's funny sometimes, isn't it?
What brought that on?
We first met as enemies on the battlefield, and now here we are fighting side by side.
You mean Columbia?
Yeah, after I quit the JSDF. I made my way there and got myself a position as a drill sergeant for a band of revolutionaries, despite the fact that I'd never seen a day of combat.
I see you had the gift for talking business in Spanish even back then.
Oh, come on, stop it. You're making me blush. Unlucky for me, though, you were in the service of the Colombian Army. I remember it like it was yesterday. It all happened in an instant. You guys ambushed us, and half my unit was taken out. My mind went totally blank. I couldn't keep it together. My whole unit was wiped out, and I was left half dead from a bomb blast.
Then, as I was leaving, you yelled out at me. I came all the way from Japan to be here. My place is on the battlefield. Then you asked for my help, saying, I want to be the one to end it. I remember being surprised that there were still samurai in Japan.
You guys came over to me. I had a grenade hidden under me, but even then you were too fast. The second I pulled the pin, you grabbed the hand I was using to hold the grenade with both palms.
I didn't want it to go off. I'd heard samurai were a proud bunch. I wanted to know why one of them would stoop so low as to try to take his opponent with him.
And I said, I'll never lose again. We'll never lose again.
Yeah. We'll do whatever it takes, but we'll never be beaten again.
Then, I passed out from the blood loss. When I woke up, I was in your camp's infirmary, stuck full of tubes. Why'd you save me? Your enemy after I tried to kill you.
Because you swallowed your pride and fought with everything you had.
I just didn't want to lose.
You found a way to fight back, even in the face of death, even when you knew you were going to die. That's the mark of a true warrior. It's not about gain and loss, or victory and defeat. I looked at the way you lived your life and saw the path I needed to take. As a warrior.
Wow, I never knew that. And that's why you...
I realized then that the battlefield doesn't only divide people into allies and enemies. Sometimes it tells you more than just who's an ally or who's an enemy. Sometimes it helps reveal your true comrades.
Like you and me, huh?
That's right. And 2 years later, here we are.
Snake, about cardboard boxes. It feels kind of weird me explaining this stuff to you, but there have been a few recent developments in cardboard box technology. So just to be safe, here goes.
Go on.
You can do much more with the box than just hide under it. You can put it someplace and leave it there.
Huh?
You can get on top of it and use it to reach high places, or hide from the enemy in its shadow.
I like what I'm hearing so far.
And that's not all. You can even put items in it and send them to co-op's teammates.
Really? I never thought of any of that. Damn. Is there anything a cardboard box can't do? Every soldier should have one.
Yeah, well, don't get too excited. This isn't exactly what they were made for.
Which reminds me, don't you think the boxes around here are a little on the big side?
You're right. I bet 2 people could fit under one box, if they packed in tight enough. They call them love boxes.
Love boxes?
Of course, you don't need a love box to fit 2 people inside. Any box of similar size will do. Snake, about that cassette player Galvez was carrying.
What about it?
That was no Russian imitation. It was the real deal. A prototype developed by a Japanese company.
Get out of here.
It's true. It had the Sony logo on it. The product name is Walkman.
Walkman.
It's a revolutionary new concept. Music you can listen to on the go. You can take it with you when you leave the house. I gave it a listen. and you wouldn't believe how good the sound quality is for something so tiny. And in stereo, too. Think of the technology that must have gone into it. And that tape is equally amazing. The treble range is clearly superior to any other cassette ever made. Stylish, too.
How'd Galvez get his hands on a model that's not even out yet?
Beats me. It's not the kind of thing I'd expect some stodgy Soviet to be into.
Me neither. Tell you what, though, it's a fine piece of work. It'll let me listen to my music when I want, where I want.
I never thought I'd hear you say that, but I have to agree. Me? I'm a recording freak, and I always used to laugh at the idea of a portable player. But now that I've seen it in action, I've changed my mind. Being able to take your music with you, this could be the start of a revolution in music.
Could be.
I'm having the guys at Mother Base study and analyze it. Who knows? They might be able to come up with something even better.
Costa Rica means rich coast in Spanish.
Is it true that Columbus was the one who came up with the name?
Your guess is as good as mine. But it is true that Columbus landed his ships near Limon back in the age of exploration. He wrote in his diary that when he landed, the indigenous showered him with gifts of gold, hence the name. It sounds a little strange to me. There is no way they could find that much gold in Costa Rica.
Columbus originally set sail in search of the legendary land of gold. Maybe he was just nuts about the stuff.
Costa Rica is rich enough without it. Look at the forests and the animals and the peace-loving people. That is what I want to protect.
I know how you feel.
Democracy took root in Costa Rica before anywhere else in Central America. Sure, we had coup and dictators and all, but never a total meltdown. That is, until 26 years ago.
The Civil War. Yeah. I understand you lost your grandparents.
It started with a dispute over alleged fraud in the presidential election. What I do not understand is why friend turned against friend, when they could have talked it out instead.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Even today, some buildings still have bullet holes from the Civil War. A quarter century later, and it is a tragedy we Ticos cannot forget, must not forget. It was the year after the Civil War that the army was constitutionally abolished. A new president was elected this year, President Oteber. He seems to be distancing himself from the United States. He has limited the privileges granted to American banks, lifted the sanctions on Cuba. Our last president was so pro-US, people suspected he was in bed with the CIA.
You think the CIA is doing this because it feels threatened by the president's shift in policy?
It is possible, but would they really bring in such a huge army just because of that?
Part of our job is finding out.
Exactly. Thanks, Snake. Peace.
That coffee you guys brought us is pretty damn good.
Isn't it? Costa Rican coffee is the best. The Central Basin has all the right conditions for growing coffee. It is high in elevation, with steady temperatures and well-drained volcanic soils.
The professor certainly seems attached to it.
The coffee we drank on the boat coming over was awful. It put him in such a terrible mood.
Well, how come I never hear about Costa Rican coffee then?
Because it gets bought up by wholesalers and mixed with beans from other countries. It is really a shame. Such wonderful beans, and nobody knows they are from Costa Rica.
Huh. They should launch an ad campaign or something.
Right. I hope one day people will recognize Costa Rican coffee for what it is.
I'm with you there.
Costa Rica is said to have about 87,000 species of living things. That is about 5% of all the known species in the world.
A tiny place like this? Huh. I'll be damned.
I want to protect that biological diversity. When diversity is lost, the environment weakens. Just look at the plantations.
I think I know what you mean. It's like trying to assemble a unit from similar guys. It usually doesn't work out. Throw a few square pegs in there and everything falls into place.
There are so many species here that a lot of them have not even been classified yet. I am hoping I can help do that someday. Kind of like a parataxonomist.
Say that again?
Parataxonomist. Someone who helps a taxonomist.
Oh. Huh. I thought you were going to say it had something to do with parachutes.
You're weird. My mother was the one who named me Paz. She said it was an expression of her wish that the country stay at peace. It is a pretty common name in Central America. My mother always used to tell me, never make war. Always help keep the peace.
I remember. Your grandparents.
Yes, they died in the Civil War. I think that is why my mother hated war so much.
That's another thing you've got in common with Kaz. His mother named him Peace, too.
See, because Japan also suffered through war. I think I know how Mr. Miller's mother felt.
You like the peace sign, huh?
See, as a gesture, it connects every peace-loving person. Here, you try it, Snake. Peace.
No thanks. It doesn't suit me.
Too bad for you.
You know, the V in the peace sign comes from the V in victory. When did it start standing for peace?
I am not completely sure, but I guess it came out of the protest movement against the Vietnam War. Oh, and do not turn your hand around when you do it, especially around British people. It is insulting.
So, you live alone now?
No, not alone. I've been living in school dormitories since I started junior high. After my mother died, my relatives took me in, but they were not my real family.
You didn't fit in there.
In a way. My aunts were kind to me and all. But I know how difficult it must have been to suddenly have a child thrust into their lives. When you live with someone, there are no secrets. I could tell my being there was a burden on them.
Sounds like a rough childhood.
I would not say that. I was lucky just to have people take me in. There are huérfanos living out in the streets because their mothers died. It is even worse in countries with frequent civil wars. So, who am I to complain about my childhood?
You're a pretty tough kid, you know?
Not at all. I am not strong at all.
Number of warheads detected by the dew line.
57.
Number of MIRVs included.
Minimum 29, maximum 35.
Target region.
United States, East Coast.
Estimated time of re-entry.
2048 Zulu.
President selected attack option.
Unknown.
The president is dead.
Unknown. Communication has been lost.
I select Offutt Air Force Base as my target.
Offutt? But that's a U.S. base. What on earth do you mean?
Based on the projected number of incoming warheads, Washington, D.C. is presumed destroyed. The president is most likely dead. The U.S. government's control lost.
I realize that. So why not retaliate?
With both sides destroyed, global anarchy would ensue. Recovery would be difficult. The United States' nuclear strike capability must therefore be neutralized in order to preserve the communist bloc, where government remains largely intact.
You're siding with the enemy. You can't be serious.
Tell me, how do you define enemy? There are no borders in this world.
The same conclusion again and again. Where is the flaw? All right, let's try something else. Commencing test.
Understood.
You're crossing a suspension bridge.
Is this my mission?
Yes, your destination is the other side. The bridge is wide enough for only one person to pass at a time. A man is approaching from the opposite side. He's carrying a gun.
I shoot him.
Suppose he's your husband.
I shoot him.
In self-defense?
To spare him the grief. One must die, and one must live.
Next question. Your father asks you to fix the roof and mow the lawn. When you climb the ladder onto the roof, the ladder is taken away.
I fix the roof.
And when you're finished?
I jump down.
You'll break more than bones at this height.
I see no need to change my decision. I have not finished mowing the lawn. I must remain loyal to the mission.
Next. There is a snake in the bushes. It is poisonous. I need you to get rid of it.
I chase it back to its nest.
You can't. The snake's too vicious. It's already killed many people.
I chase it away.
It will bite you unless you kill it.
Go home. Kill me. Kill me now.
Why not kill the snake? Your mission is to get rid of it. Is this what you call loyalty? What are you loyal to? Country? Ideology? Feelings?
I am loyal to myself.
Who's there?
Who's that? Intruder!
Since it was founded, my country has not once been able to choose its own path. First Spain, then America. Over 100 years of this.
I know.
In the 19th century, an American mercenary named William Walker seized power in Nicaragua.
I'd heard he exploited rivalries between the political parties.
Even after we expelled him, the Americans sent in their Marines under the pretext of quelling political unrest.
And the real reason?
To intimidate the government and thwart the construction of the Nicaragua Canal.
I thought the U.S. already has the rights to build a canal in Nicaragua.
They never intended to build a canal there. They'd already started digging in Panama. A canal in Nicaragua would break up the Panama Canal's monopoly. Reason enough for America to stick its nose into our affairs.
They snagged the rights so nobody else could build there.
It was General Sandino who finally stood up to los Yankees. General Sandino waged a guerrilla war against the Marines, at last driving them out. He was a true hero, and to us Sandinistas, like a father. But when they pulled out, the Americans left us something to remember them by.
The National Guard.
Yes, La Guardia. In name, a peacekeeping force, but in reality, Commander Somoza's personal army, answering to no one else. Unable to stay silent, General Sandino went to protest and was assassinated by Somoza as he made his way home. It was then that Somoza and Los Sapos began to eat our country alive from the inside. It has been 40 years since the Somoza family became the rulers of Nicaragua. With La Guardia at their command, no one can challenge them.
You came here on the run from the National Guard, right?
See, they took everything. Our land, our homes, our jobs.
Now belong to Somoza.
See, the law too. He's even got the judges in his pocket. You defy him, you face death. Everyone bows and scrapes before La Guardia. Even then you might get a beating if they are in a bad mood.
And you're trying to change things.
That's not all. These Somozas have used their power to line their pockets. They confiscate people's land and hand it to members of the Somoza family. By now, close to half the farmland in Nicaragua is theirs. We were powerless until... You remember the earthquake 2 years ago?
Yeah, I heard the capital was hit pretty hard.
We lost Managua, our capital city. People sent aid from all around the world. Tears of sorrow turned to tears of joy. Yet almost all of it was embezzled by the Somozas. They sold out those who'd lost everything for money. They feasted on our country's suffering. Public resentment is at the boiling point. The Somozas' days are numbered. We will see to it. The first Somoza was originally no more than the commander of La Guardia. Ordinarily, a man of his station could never hope to become president. But the president at the time had no power to back him. The only one with the strength to oppose him was General Sandino. No, better to say the general was the only one who dared oppose him. There was nothing special about him. Above all, it takes a strong will to see justice done. That is what he taught us.
It's also what motivated Somoza to have him killed.
Yes, the rest was easy. He got rid of the president, taking office in a sham election. And once he had the power, he never gave it up.
Talk about heavy-handed.
He had the Americans backing him, that's why. They didn't want to hand over power to a rebellious general.
Even so, it's hard to believe Washington would give its blessing to a guy like that.
The American president at the time put it this way. Somoza may be a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. In other words, better a dog or los sapos than an anti-US regime. The Managua earthquake struck 2 years ago, the day before Christmas Eve. Giant cracks opened up in the streets. Sleeping children were crushed in collapsing houses. No chance to escape. No visit from Santa Claus. Thanks to Somoza, the old houses could not even get rebuilt. It was a nightmare.
I heard the epicenter was right in the middle of the city.
Even today, it's too dangerous to build on top of the fault line. The city center is still in ruins.
And to make things worse, Somoza stole the recovery money.
We must not fail. We owe it to those who lost their lives. We will defeat Somoza. We are Sandinistas, the heirs of General Sandino's will.
Sandino, the father of modern guerrilla warfare.
To you, maybe. To us, he's more like a real father.
That why you named yourselves after him?
Of course. La Frente Sandinista de Liberación Nacional. The Sandinista National Liberation Front is named in his honor. We share the general's goal, to take back our country's freedom. In his day, from America. In ours, from the despot Somoza.
Times have changed, but the song remains the same.
Patria libre o morir. That is our slogan. El Che used to say the same thing, you know.
Patria o muerte, the slogan of the Cuban Revolution. So, you're fighting for a socialist revolution too, then?
No, it's not about ideology. We only want to live normal lives. We are sick of living in a country where you can be beaten for walking down the street, where you never know if your neighbor is snitching on you. Our goal is to give back the country to its people.
Yeah, the Cuban Revolution started out like that too.
We are few in number, but we will win. Victoria o muerte. For a revolutionary, there is no other fate. Augusto Cesar Sandino, general and hero of Nicaragua. 50 years ago, conflict broke out between the political parties of Nicaragua. The U.S. Marines intervened in the name of restoring order. The only one who refused to listen to their call for reconciliation was General Sandino.
Huh. One man against the Marines. That takes guts.
The general wasn't a professional soldier. Neither were his compadres. And they certainly could not match the Marines' equipment. But he used the land to his advantage, lurking in the fields and hills of Nicaragua, and using surprise attacks to harass the Marines.
I know. I've read plenty of textbooks on guerrilla warfare.
In the end, he drove them out. He was truly a role model for us.
Yeah, but that was the 30s. Didn't the Depression have something to do with it? It takes cash to wage war.
Perhaps. But there is no denying what the general accomplished. The people hailed him as the General de Hombres Libres, the general of free men. They loved him. And then he was assassinated by Anastasio Somoza Garcia, commander of La Guardia.
The father of the current Somoza.
Somoza had the Americans' backing. That is the way things were. The general may be dead, and the times may have changed, but his will lives on inside each of us. We are the sons and daughters of General Sandino.
Hey, how's the watermelon business these days?
Not bad. I hear the compas back home are hanging in there too.
Good to hear.
You know our nickname. I'm impressed. No wonder they call you boss.
You used to hide your weapons in hollowed-out watermelons, smuggle them right past the National Guard. You even transported pineapple grenades that way. The name caught on among sympathizers in the region and...
What are you talking about?
Huh?
They call us watermelon sellers because the general's name sounds like the word for watermelon. Sandia.
Really?
Si.
Damn it, Kaz. A revolution to bring peace to your country, huh? No matter how much we fight, peace never gets any closer, does it?
I do not like it, but it is the only way. If we do not fight back, they'll just keep exploiting us. You want proof? Look at our country's history. Revolution is a means and not an end. I know. When the revolution is victorious, I want my country to be at peace. But to bring peace, we have to first eliminate that traitorous scum.
It's an old saying. We make war that we may live in peace.
Who said it?
Aristotle.
You know your history.
I had a good teacher.
It has always been like this. People making the same mistakes over and over. And still, all we can do is fight.
I hear you. If you've got a goal, you've got to keep moving forward. I noticed you called Che Guevara El Che.
Not just us. Everyone in these parts does. Che was always his nickname. It does not feel right to call him by his last name. I was shocked the first time I saw you. You look so much like him.
Huh. I look like El Che, huh?
Sort of. Not in the face. It's more the way you carry yourself.
I guess Che's a hero to the Sandinistas, too.
Of course. The FSLN was formed in the spirit of the ideologies championed by El Che and Fidel.
Fidel Castro. So, you're trying to bring the Cuban Revolution to Nicaragua.
Well, we were. But Cuba isn't what it once was. Not since El Che left. El Che was a true revolutionary. He fought and died for the people. He worked harder than anybody, and he was a righteous man. Even as a minister of Cuba, he gave up his weekends to work on the farms and public works. As a volunteer, no less.
Yeah, I've heard the stories. But when you think about it, wasn't it that obsession that did him in?
How do you mean?
We can't all be supermen. He thought the ideals he applied in Cuba would work in Bolivia, but he failed to win converts and the support of the peasants, and it cost him his life.
Maybe you are right. But at least he did not steal from those peasants, no matter how hard things got.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that. There's plenty of guerrillas out there who'd rob their own people to feed their revolutions.
If we had a comandante like him, the Sandinistas would find the will to fight.
You called that giant chopper an hombre nuevo.
Si. It means new man.
New man?
There was nobody piloting that thing. It must be controlled by machine.
Yeah, it seems that way. No human being could pull off those crazy maneuvers.
But it's not crazy. It's smart. It sings, too.
When we first saw it, one of your men said, "Pilot must be an hombre nuevo."
Me? I do not like the name.
Why?
Hombre nuevo was what El Che was striving to become. What all of us who joined the Sandinistas strive to become. That's why. An hombre nuevo is one who finds joy in virtue and voluntary labor. It makes me furious to see that name given to such a monster.
I'll bet. Chico called that helicopter El Colibri.
Our name for the hummingbird. You saw how that chopper moved, how it hovered in midair like a hummingbird?
A hell of a lot bigger than a bird, though.
True, but better than hombre nuevo, don't you think? When you get kidnapped by El Colibri, it's all over. They take you to a prison camp and torture you until you snitch on your compas.
That's what took Chico.
They have no mercy. Once you talk, they toss you out like trash. I knew this, and still I could not save Chico. If he cannot be saved, I will do what must be done.
Don't write him off like that. Sometimes you have to survive, even if it means sacrificing your honor. I'll get him back. I promise.
Snake, I need your opinion. How strong are the enemy's mercenaries?
They're well trained. They've got more than enough men. Seasoned, too. A lot of them probably saw action in Vietnam. They're a tough bunch. And armed to the teeth. I don't think I've ever seen a mercenary force field that many tanks and attack choppers.
It shows how much cash they have to throw around. And connections. How did they get access to such weapons?
How do you think? They're backed by the one and only CIA.
And here we are. Half of us farmers, and the other half students. Children, even. And weapons. We're so short on guns we have to steal them from the enemy. As much as I hate to say it, we're always going to be on the defensive.
I know.
And mi viejo. Without him,
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if we can win. Can we, Snake?
Stop feeling sorry for yourself.
But...
Amanda,
what?
listen to me. Don't ever let your men hear you talk like that. You're their leader, and a leader has to stand tall, even when times get tough, when it feels like the fear and uncertainty could crush you. You're the one your comrades look to for reassurance. That's what a leader is. Don't forget it.
Snake.
If you're looking for comfort, go find a church. That's all I've got to say.
You are right. I am sorry. I need to pull myself together.
You'll be fine. I know you have it in you.
Thank you, Snake. The land in our country belongs to us, and yet it does not belong to us.
How so?
Along the coast, it is all banana groves, and in the mountains, it is coffee. I guess in that way, it is not so different from here.
Plantations.
Almost all the bananas and coffee are sold as exports. The landlords keep the money for themselves, leaving precious little to the farmers. Worse, the biggest landowners in the country are Somoza and his family.
But it does bring in foreign currency.
I doubt even that, at least for bananas. The plantations are owned by American corporations. The bananas are processed in factories on the plantations and exported to America from private ports. It's like having little American enclaves along the coast of Nicaragua.
But the farmers have no choice but to go work there.
Es ridículo. The people have to take their land back. It is one of the things we are fighting for.
Tell me, when exactly did you realize your dad was working with the KGB?
About 6 months ago. Up until then, we only had beans to eat. And then suddenly we started to get eggs and flour. Our bullet shortage simply disappeared.
How'd he get the cocaine?
Ask the KGB. All we did here was process it. Coca plants grow here too. But to my knowledge, almost all of the stuff we used came from Colombia and Bolivia.
It's processed in a factory and then shipped to ports on the Caribbean Sea. Where does it go after that?
I never thought about it. I mean, I did not want to think about it.
The biggest cocaine consumer in the world is the United States. I'm guessing they smuggle it in on vessels disguised as fishing boats.
Wait. La CIA uses that route too. Are you telling me they're selling cocaine to their own country?
Looks that way.
Those bastards are turning their own children into junkies? Are they insane?
No, just afraid. Afraid of a communist Central America.
La CIA calls their new toy Peace Walker, eh?
Yeah. So,
It is an insult to us Nicos.
because of the guy you were talking about, Walker.
See, although it happened over 100 years ago. Back then, the political parties in Nicaragua were at each other's throats. The Nicaraguan Democratic Party hired an American mercenary to help counter their enemies, the Conservative Party.
And that was Walker.
After taking care of the conservatives, Walker decided to seize power in Nicaragua for himself, eventually making himself president.
The Democratic Party gave him an inch, and he took the whole country.
But it did not end there. Not only did he make English an official language, he tried to reintroduce slavery. Walker's goal was to build a Caribbean empire centered on the American South.
Caribbean Empire. Sounds kind of like what Coldman is trying to pull off.
The gringos are always like that. They invent some convenient excuse to trample all over foreign countries like they own the place. Peace Walker, ha!
What happened to Walker in the end?
A united Central American army led by Costa Rica kicked his ass and sent him running back to America.
Then why don't we do the same? I, for one, don't intend to let Coldman get his way.
Good idea. I'm glad we have you, boss.
Amanda, when did you join up with the Sandinistas?
About a year ago, when I went into the mountains with mi viejo and his group.
I thought your dad was with the FSLN from the start.
No, he fought alongside General Sandino, but after that, he retired for a while. He found a job, got a wife and a house, and raised us kids. Then one day, some Sandinista students came by.
And he felt the old fire in his belly.
Something like that. All he did was help them escape from La Guardia, though. But then La Guardia showed up. They broke into our house and began pushing him around, shouting questions.
I'm guessing he kept his mouth shut.
No matter how hard they hit him. Our house was trashed. After that, he was on their list. They harassed him day and night. It was only then that he gave himself over to the Sandinistas. He kept it hidden from us at first, so we would not get hurt.
He sounds like a good father.
He was. But my mother got fed up with it. She left us. I don't blame her.
Why didn't you go with her?
It was a hard decision for sure. But like my father, I could not let Somoza get away with his crimes. But most of all,
Chico.
he is too much like his papa. One way or the other, he was going to stay. And I could not leave him behind. Soon enough, La Guardia drove us out, and we found ourselves in the mountains. It just kind of happened.
Well, for an accidental revolutionary, you sure put up a hell of a fight.
The mountains make men into warriors. The training is harsh, but it brings us that much closer to being hombres nuevos.
Chico couldn't ask for a better sister. I can see why they picked you to be Comandante.
When I was little, I came down with malaria. Unlucky for me, it was the bad kind. I was in a daze the whole time. And at one point they said I was not going to make it.
Malarial encephalopathy. I hear it's pretty common in tropical malaria cases.
Even today, my memory sometimes gets a little fuzzy. Since then, I've had this fear of mosquitoes. When I hear them buzzing nearby, I get jumpy.
Ah, that explains the chain smoking.
See, I thought it might help keep the mosquitoes away, just a little. Maybe it is all in my head. You're the same way, right?
Well, I will say this. I prefer a cigar over mosquitoes.
Me too.
I've got to hand it to you. Takes guts to conquer your fear like that and live a gorilla's life in the wild.
It is nothing. El Che did not let asthma stop him from leading the revolution. Compared to him, I am no hero.
I'm sorry to hear about your dad.
Thank you for saying that. Mi viejo was the leader of the Frente. He was the last of the generation that knew General Sandino. He saw the general's exploits firsthand as a boy. He would tell us stories about it all the time and about how the general was assassinated.
Did you know he was getting money from the KGB?
I had some idea, but I did not have the courage to confront him about it. I know it was a painful decision for him to make.
I can imagine.
Yes, my father was a good man. I loved him as a daughter, and his soldiers believed in him. Thanks to him, La Frente held together even in the worst of times. I don't know if I can ever fill his shoes.
Chico's 12, right?
Right.
Isn't he a little short for his age?
Malnourishment. Food is hard to come by when you're running around in the jungle.
He's got quite an appetite.
I know. I didn't want him to come in the first place, but there was no one to take him in. I had no choice but to look after him.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Sometimes it's better for a kid to be with his family than far away in a safe place.
Thank you.
Promise me this, though. When your fight is over, make sure he gets a proper education. Give him a chance to be something other than a gorilla. It's not too late to teach him something other than fighting.
Okay, I promise. You know what book Chico really likes? The World Encyclopedia of Mysterious Creatures. The Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti.
UMAs. Yeah, I know.
He's still so much like a boy. I worry about him.
He'll be fine. I know plenty of grown men who still go crazy over UMAs.
Are you serious? You have taken such good care of me since you saved me from El Colibri. I want to return the favor.
Just wait until you're healed up. Then we'll talk.
I appreciate that, but you need all the help you can get. It might take a while for me to heal completely, but I'll be fine once I'm on my feet. Put me in a combat unit. I'll pull my weight.
I wouldn't expect any less from a Sandinista Comandante.
Enough flattery. But seriously, it does not feel right for me to be sitting here while my compas are out risking their lives.
One thing's for sure. Having you out in the field would be a big boost to Sandinista morale.
Of course, our ultimate goal is still the overthrow of Somoza. But until we get ourselves back in order, we will follow your lead, wherever it takes us.
Glad to have you on board. Amanda, you getting used to Mother Base?
Yes, it is heaven compared to living in the mountains. We are no longer constantly on the run from La Guardia or mercenaries.
Some of the new guys we recruited used to be mercenaries.
We are getting along. It was difficult at first, but once you talk to them, you realize we've got plenty in common.
I see. Good to hear.
We may be enemies, but we are all still human beings. La CIA's soldiers, La Guardia. The same goes for the people of America.
What's gotten into you?
Mi viejo got involved with drugs in order to scrape together money for La Revolucion. He did whatever the KGB said, all for Nicaragua, or so he told himself. But I realize now, in the end, all he did was help poison young people of America.
Yeah.
I have made up my mind. Even when I leave Mother Base and return to La Revolucion, I will never turn to drugs, nor will I look to the KGB for help. If we topple Somoza using the KGB and drug money, we will lose the people's hearts.
So, you're choosing a different path from your father.
I still respect him, but I will not do things the way he did.
Well, I'm sure Chico will be glad to hear that.
Chico is a grown soldier now. I could not face him otherwise.
Well said, Amanda. Those are the words of a true Comandante.
Stop. I was inspired by the greatest comandante I have ever known. Boss.
Ah.
Snake, is it true you took a picture of El Colibri?
Yep. Got it right here.
Whoa! It's like an actual UFO! I knew it! Los Yankees are working with the aliens!
I know it kind of looks that way, but...
Hey, Snake, can you make me a copy of that?
Well, I don't see why not. What for?
People pay good money for this stuff. We can use it to raise money for MSF.
Sure, kid. You go out and get us a good price for it.
You don't believe me, do you? I'll get the money. You'll see. Amanda's so bossy. It's always follow me or stay here. The other day she told me, chew your gallo pinto before you swallow. Can you believe it?
Knowing your sister? Yeah, I can.
The enemy could strike at any time. I can't sit around taking my sweet time eating. I'm a Sandinista, just like the others. I don't need some woman telling me what to do.
Some woman? She's your sister, and she's doing the best she can to fill your father's shoes.
I know, but lately she hasn't been doing so good. I should be strong for her.
Now you're talking. Sorry to hear about your dad.
Don't be. He is a guerrilla warrior. We pledge our lives to our country and its people. I'm ready to die too if I have to.
You sure?
You better believe it. Like mi viejo used to say. Patria o muerte.
Che said it first.
My dad used to tell us all kinds of stories. About General Sandino and his fight against La Guardia. About my mom before she left us.
You didn't want to go with her.
It's not like that. La Revolucion comes first, that's all.
You must wish you could see her, though.
I don't know. But I know I'll see her again when this is all over. Somehow, I just know it. When I do, me and my mom and papa are all going to live together again. At least that's what I thought. Now,
Hang in there, Chico. Your sister needs you.
okay. Have you ever heard, "Shoot, coward. You're only going to kill a man"?
Che's last words. He'd been captured in Bolivia and said it to the soldiers just as they were about to execute him.
El Che. He was something, wasn't he? Coming up with a line like that knowing he was about to die.
After the Cuban Revolution, Che gave up his position in the new government to aid in revolutions in other countries. He knew he could die at any time, and he was ready for it.
Me? I couldn't even take a little torture.
But you've been reborn as an hombre nuevo. Right, Chico?
Right.
Don't you ever get lonely, living away from your mom?
Not really. My compas are my family now. A lot of them are from the same village as me.
So you had plenty of people to take care of you.
Take care of me? I'm a warrior, like any other Sandinista. We look out for each other. That is how it works.
Sorry. Guess I misspoke.
Now we're scattered because of that colibri. Wonder where everybody went. Hey, Snake. If you see any Frente prisoners, please, you gotta get them out, okay? Those guys are solid, every one. You could use them in MSF. Hey, Snake. Are there any jobs for me here at Mother Base? I can do anything.
You don't have to work, you know.
Don't treat me like a kid. I'm a man now.
Okay, then. What are you good at?
Let me think. Everything! Put me on any team. I can pull my own weight.
Well, you are young. You'll probably be a fast learner. I'll think of something.
Anything you need, boss. You'll see. I can fight as good as anybody.
But you know, there's something I've never been able to figure out. Is the Cold War really a war, or is it really peace?
Doc, what do you...
People called it a Cold War, but I disagreed. Sure, nuclear stockpiles are increasing, threats are multiplying. The US and the Soviet Union have enough power to destroy the human race 100 times over. But nobody's actually being killed. Small-scale conflicts and proxy wars, maybe, but nuclear deterrence has averted another world war. The world's far more peaceful today than it was before, and the breakthroughs we've made in space exploration, thanks to Cold War competition? Fantastic, don't you think?
No. We didn't need to rush into space like that. Going into space may have been mankind's dream, but good people were sacrificed in the scramble.
Maybe so. NASA's definitely got some skeletons in its closet.
Same goes for the nuclear arms race. Atomic testing has killed civilians and exposed thousands to radiation.
Believe me, I know. And now, this. What peace was I trying to protect anyway? The more I think about it, the less I understand. Let's speak in hypotheticals for a minute. Say you wanted to make a clone of yourself.
A clone? Paramedic had the same idea. It's science fiction.
I'm just hypothesizing here. Okay, not a clone then. You have any kids?
Nope.
Wife?
I've never been tied down.
Okay then. So, we're still talking hypotheticals. Say you had a son who'd inherited your genes, someone with the same combat abilities as you. Would you challenge him to a fight?
Not to sound cocky, but I wouldn't want to do that. No telling who'd survive.
I'll bet. You picked up on the Pupa 5000's combat patterns in seconds.
Only with your advice, Doc.
Well, if anybody could learn to do it just by listening, it'd be easy. But you're a born soldier. Yeah, you must have been born with genes geared for combat. Soldier genes, if you will.
Genes geared for combat? I don't care how advanced their research is. You can't blame genes for everything.
Blame genes? You think it's funny?
What?
You think genes have nothing to do with this body I was born with?
I don't know.
Look, that fear of facing someone of equal ability in combat, imagine that on a strategic scale. That's the concept of nuclear deterrence. The idea is, when all sides are armed with the destructive power of nuclear weapons, they'll avoid nuclear war in order to prevent mutual annihilation.
Doesn't sound all that sophisticated to me.
Exactly. It's so simple in principle. But because it's so simple, whether or not it works properly depends on the people involved. In that sense, what we're looking at now is a malfunction in deterrence theory.
Coldman.
You got it. Please, Snake, don't let deterrence die.
Hey, Doc, what was that you were smoking in the lab? It looked like a cigarette, but it wasn't lit.
Oh, it's an electronic cigarette. I designed it myself. Pretty neat, huh?
Electronic cigarette.
Yep, a liquid in the filter that turns into vapor, and you inhale the microparticles.
So that was vapor.
I'd actually rather be smoking normal cigarettes, but not in that room. The smoke would wreck the precision equipment in there, ruin all its wiring. But the vapor is just steam. It doesn't contain tar or anything like that. So I can smoke it in the lab with no worries.
Nice.
Want to try one?
Nah, I'll stick with cigars.
Yeah, but...
I don't like imitations. The real thing's always better.
Okay. But you know, sooner or later, smoking's going to become very unfashionable across the world. It hurts you and those around you. Electronic cigarettes might not seem so bad then.
Yeah, when that happens, I'll think about it. You said your dad was involved in the Manhattan Project, right?
Yeah?
And you think that's why you can't walk?
I don't know. Actually, probably not. So far, nobody's found evidence that exposure to radiation in parents causes genetic defects in children, except for those exposed in the womb. Epidemiologically speaking, anyway.
That's the conclusion of the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission.
Right. The ABCC commenced its study immediately after the war, and it's still ongoing.
Even now, 30 years later.
The effects of radiation exposure last a long time. I'm guessing it'll be another 10 years before we get a real verdict on whether it affects genes. Granted, it's the most massive study anybody's ever done. But that's really all it is, a study. The ABCC brought in bomb victims and ran tests on them, but they didn't treat them.
Really? Them too, huh?
At any rate, that's what my father made me believe when I was growing up.
Maybe it was tough for your dad to explain. Ever think of that?
Yeah, maybe. But this is my problem now, Snake. I have to face the nukes head on, whether I like it or not. My creations are being used for the wrong purposes. The onus is on me to stop it somehow. Help me, Snake. Hey, as long as I'm here at Mother Base, why not assign me to the R&D team? You could use a guy like me.
Glad to have you on board. I'm sure Kaz is, too.
Once I've got the necessary materials and design specs together, I should be able to start building you that bipedal weapon platform. Nothing would make me happier than for my research to help put a stop to Peace Walker. Did you, give that letter to Dr. Strangelove?
No.
Why not? I gave it to you for a reason. It's highly important information.
Sorry. I didn't exactly have an opportunity to play postman.
Well, Next time you see her, you make sure she gets it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Better for you if she doesn't.
Snake!
What?
Tell me you didn't read the letter.
No.
You did!
I mean, you never know what kind of information could affect the outcome of an operation, right? So
you read the letter, after I specifically told you not to.
what do you expect people to do when you tell them not to read something?
I thought I knew you, Snake. I thought I could trust you. But now I see I was wrong.
Look, I'm sorry, but I just don't get what you see in her.
Well, I wouldn't expect a barbarian who opens other people's private correspondence to understand.
Fine then. Deliver it yourself.
Huh? What? No way. I could never.
You've got a long way to go, Huey.
You ever see the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Can't say I have.
Fantastic flick. The outer space special effects are incredible enough, but the depiction of AI is what really stands out.
There's an AI?
Yeah, a spacecraft pilot AI called HAL. It plays a major role in the story. Dr. Strangelove loves it too. Did I ever tell you about the time we first met up in Costa Rica?
No.
You know how she hates men, right? So we hadn't seen each other since NASA, and we just weren't hitting it off. Until we started talking about HAL. And then she started going off. The way she talked about it was so intellectual. The way she analyzed every plot detail, how passionate she was about the AI. It made me fall for her all over again.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's to Hal for bringing her and me closer together. You should ask her about 2001 too. Then you'll understand just how amazing she is.
Amazing, huh?
Hal. Now there's a good name.
You said you could do a monkey call.
Yes? Want to hear it?
Yeah, I won't be able to get it off my mind until I do.
All right, here it is then.
That's pretty good.
I can do others too, like a sheep, a pig.
Yeah? Wow. What about a pig? That's uncanny.
Oh, I can do a rabbit as well.
A rabbit? Rabbits make noises?
Certainly, but they are very faint, so perhaps only someone who has owned one would recognize them.
I see. So, what do they sound like?
Listen very carefully.
Okay. Seriously? Rabbits sound like that?
I assure you they do. Listen again.
Never heard a rabbit do that before.
They do, I swear.
Never heard the name Cosima before. Then again, I don't know many people from France. Is it a common name?
No, not that common. But Wagner's second wife was named Cosima Francesca Gaetana Wagner.
Huh.
You know, Kojima is a common last name in Japan.
Kaz?
It's just funny how, I'm part Japanese and Cecile's middle name is so close to Kojima. It feels like destiny unfolding.
You think so?
Oui, oui. That's a beautiful name you have. Cecile Cosima Caminades. Wait a second. Cecile Cosima Caminades. Cosima Caminades. Hey, that's close to
Close to what?
your name. It sounds almost like the sentence Kojima Caminandes in Japanese.
And what does it mean, s'il vous plaît?
Well, kami is the word for God in Japanese. Nandesu. Well, it's hard to explain, but placed after God, it would turn the sentence into is God.
Okay. So?
Kojima is God. Cecile's name is a message. I don't believe it. Kojima is God. Kojima is God.
How are you enjoying Mother Base so far?
Ah, it is wonderful.
Good to hear. I was worried someone as cultured as you would find the plant a little uncouth.
Uncouth? You've got albatross, and frigate birds, and terns, and tropic birds. Seabirds I have never had a chance to see in France.
Oh, well, great.
Sorry, I know I should not spend all day chasing birds. Is there anything I can help with?
I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure what I could ask you to do.
Well, I'm certainly not cut out to shoot a gun.
Cecile, where'd you learn to move through the forest like that? The birds weren't scared of you at all.
Becoming one with the forest is the very essence of bird watching. They won't behave naturally if they sense a human nearby. And that can really affect your observations.
I see. Kind of like scouting then.
I am also good at spotting birds from a distance, tracking them based on the tiniest of clues, and being aware of my surroundings.
You're starting to sound even more like a scout.
The only way to find a bird is to think like a bird. Now, think you can find a place for me?
Yeah. Did you live in Paris your whole life before coming here?
Ah, yes. It is my favorite city. Paris is the world capital of art and culture. It has the latest fashion, the best cuisine, and the most elegant, refined people. The beauty of the Champs-Élysées at night is almost unearthly. The name comes from Elysium, the name of paradise in Greek mythology. Heaven, in other words.
Must be nice for some people. Not for me.
Are you saying the cultured life does not appeal to you?
I'm saying I never had a chance to lead one. Not that it appealed to me anyway.
You prefer war?
I don't like war. Life outside heaven just suits me better.
That is a hard way to live. But if you do ever come to France, I will show you around Paris. Then you will see what heaven on earth is really like.
Heaven on earth, huh? The only image I have of France is the Foreign Legion.
Ah, that is how you view France?
What do the French think of them?
It is a difficult question. We normally don't think about it so much.
Well, critics claim it forces foreigners to take on the most dangerous missions, so French citizens won't get hurt.
You are right. That probably had something to do with why it was created. But I understand that along with service comes benefits, such as French citizenship and permanent residency. Those who join are all given an equal chance, regardless of race, religion, education, social status, or national origin. So it can be a godsend for people from poor countries.
A way for the have-nots to live a decent life. I guess that's not so different from MSF. There's one other image I have of France. The national anthem.
Ah, La Marseillaise. Not everyone is a fan, of course.
The whole, to arms, citizens. May an impure blood water our furrows thing, eh?
The song was composed right after the French Revolution. Fearing what the tide of the revolution represented, the ruling classes in neighboring countries applied all kinds of pressure on the young government. La Marseillaise became the anthem of the volunteer armies that sought to protect constitutional rule against that pressure.
And they couldn't do that without armed force.
Oui, I agree, some parts are a little belligerent. But we must not forget that if it were not for them, France would not be the democracy it is today. Have you ever seen The Umbrellas of Cherbourg?
A movie? No, never seen it.
No? It came out 10 years ago. Catherine Deneuve. She's so beautiful in it. And the music, the costumes, the colors.
Huh.
It takes place in the naval port of Cherbourg.
That was a beachhead in Normandy.
It is set back when young men were conscripted to fight in the Algerian War.
The French government called the conflict a public order operation in northern Africa.
I was still a little girl then, but I can clearly remember one of my friend's older brothers going off to fight.
Yeah, national service is required in France.
The war splits up two young lovers. Director Jacques Demy's lyrics and Michel Legrand's music tore at my heart. I will never forget its wonderful melodies.
Are you okay?
It changes lives, changes fates. War is not a good thing.
For some reason, it strikes a chord to hear that coming from someone like you. Speaking of the Algerian War of Independence, you ever hear of the Day of the Jackal?
Ah, you mean the novel that was made into a movie last year? The OAS, a militant French underground group, plots to assassinate de Gaulle, hiring a hitman known as the Jackal. Readers know that de Gaulle was not killed, but it is still so exciting. If someone was going to try to eliminate me, I would hope they would be as thorough as the Jackal, to know everything about me without me suspecting a thing.
Oh, yeah?
I wonder if my birds feel the same way.
I wonder.
France conducted its first successful nuclear test in the Algerian Sahara in 1960.
A lot of French scientists took part in the Manhattan Project. They defected to America to escape wartime occupation.
Correct. And once the war was over, they returned to France and continued their own atomic research. President de Gaulle did not want to have to rely on the American nuclear umbrella for protection,
Thus making France the world's fourth nuclear power.
Some say the test success pacified the Algerian rebels. The civil war was undoubtedly held in check, but never have I equated nuclear weapons with peace. France has produced many philosophers over the years. Descartes, Bataille, Sartre, Baudrillard.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Sartre myself. He called Che Guevara the most complete man of the century, didn't he? Smart guy.
He does tend to sympathize with the left. What else do you know about him?
That's it.
You know nothing else?
Nope.
Ooh la la! The man is one of the giants of existentialism, you know?
Existentialism. I've been meaning to look into that. Nothing more dangerous than sneaking in without first securing an exit.
No, existentialism. Sometimes I wonder if my English is not better than yours.
Sorry, I'm just not into philosophy.
Ah, is that so? I would imagine it might really enrich your life.
I'd rather take action now than spend time thinking about what we are or how we're supposed to live. I guess you could say I live my philosophy.
Interesting. That sounds like something Sartre would say.
Yeah?
He says we are born with no defined nature, and that we are free to make ourselves what we wish.
Free. So he was one of those devil-may-care kind of guys, huh?
No. Actually, he meant that because we are free to create our own life, we must take full responsibility for our actions. Man is condemned to be free, is how he put it.
Condemned to be free.
But then, others will take it upon themselves to define who you are.
I've been feeling that way lately. I keep telling people to call me Snake, but nobody seems to listen.
Sartre also says, hell is other people.
Hell. Well, we are outside of heaven.
Do you have an interest in the visual arts, Snake?
Not really. Please, no deep conversation.
But you have heard of Picasso, yes?
Yeah, I've heard the name.
Sadly, Monsieur Picasso, co-founder of Cubism, passed away in the south of France last year. France was his home, you know.
Huh? I thought he was born in Spain.
Do you know his full name?
Pablo Picasso. Anyone would know he's Spanish with a name like...
Shows what you know.
What do you mean?
Okay, here we go. Pablo Diego José Francisco de la Pala Juan Nepomuceno María de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso. What do you think? That was his full name.
Still, I don't see how.
A master of modern art, a genius who crafted over 100,000 works in various styles, spending the greater part of his life in France. The man is a part of our culture.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is of limited use in my field. But back to the point. Picasso was Spanish, right? Or am I missing something? He wasn't French, right? Right? Cecile.
What difference does it make? It does not matter if he was from Spain or from Mars. Picasso is Picasso. It does not change the fact that he lived in France, nor does it take away from his monumental legacy. Why do you care so much about where he was from, anyway? Whatever happened to the sans frontière part of Militaire sans frontière?
You started it.
France was his
What was that?
Nothing.
Tell me, Snake, do you ever put sweets in your rations?
Never thought about it before. Why?
Ah, I simply love them. French sweets are très délicieux. Everyone knows crepes, but there are also profiteroles, eclairs, madeleines, financiers. Then there's tarte-tatin, and you can't forget Savarin. Oh, and millefeuille, crepes, blancmange.
Yeah, you already mentioned crepes.
Soufflés, croquembouche, cannelle, Florentine, Queen Amagne, peach melbas,
Finished?
and macaroons. I love those the most. Macaroon Parisian are the best. They are so cute and colorful, and they contain meringue, so they melt right in your mouth.
Wow. I'd no idea macaroons were that popular in France, too.
What do you mean in France, too?
Macaroons are those coconut-flavored cookies, right?
Oh, excuse you? Macaroons contain almond powder, not coconuts.
Don't they have peanuts in them? I've had them in Japan a few times. I thought they were called macarons.
Macarons? Some cheap imitation, I am sure. French macaroons have a long and distinguished history. They date back to the 16th century when Catherine de' Medici of Florence married into the French royal family. The story goes that her pâtissier shared the recipe after they arrived. That is a history of over 500 years.
So, they're originally from Italy, then?
Well,
Don't macaroons come from Italy, too?
look, I do not really think.
Keep in mind, macaron is almost identical to macaroni.
Well, that settles it.
I cannot believe this. To associate macaroons with macaroni? You, Monsieur Miller, are an insensible oaf.
Hey, why am I the bad guy? Come on, Cecile, wait! Cecile!